It's midday in Jamaica, and whatever time zone you're in, welcome to the Bridge Nation. Welcome to the Public Eye. I'm Ronnie Thwaites. 99 FM, 123, 13579 will link you in to this new experiment. More than an experiment now, a new feature, established in Jamaican media, reaching out to the diaspora all over the world in this very program, linking in about an hour's time with our friends at Irie Jam, sister station in New York, serving the tri-state area. Today is Wednesday, January the 26th. We're 5 days away from the end of the first month of 2022 already. Can you imagine? Welcome to the Public Eye. Every Wednesday at this time, we bring the issues straight to you. No slander, no gossip, just facts and plenty of analysis. Fairly done, open to your scrutiny. Yes, as we continue to explore some of this society's problems with an open mind and seek to find solutions. This morning on Early Rise, my co-host Chief Pearnel Charles and I had very good discussion with Gavin Logan. He's the managing partner of Stock Raises. It's a US-based company, you know, that focuses on bridging the stock exchange gap for companies and investors. I believe there's a big role for media to play in paving the way, opening the vault of information, encouraging people anywhere in the world to invest in Jamaica on terms and conditions that are good for them and good for us too. No one-sided thing do we want. That's fairness. That's what Jamaicans stand for, don't? So Mr. Logan spoke about the Jamaica Stock Exchange 17th Annual Regional Investment and Capital Markets Conference, which is going on now. Told us why he attended, and he introduced us to Mr. Luis Gonzalez, a Nicaraguan investor in the construction sector. I think it's good. The accidents of history, the reality of geography, and the tragedy of colonialism has kept us apart from the Spanish Caribbean for too long. And we have come to believe that goodness only comes from north being United Kingdom, Canada, the United States, all friends, yeah? But where we can attract investment within the Caribbean, the broader Caribbean region, that which Norman Gervin spoke of, gave his life to, that which Michael Manley chanted about, the South-South relations in trade and in investment, how good that is. So we were glad for that connection. It's a good sign. Logan also shared about the impact and the opportunities available and the key persons involved in the conference this year. Remember, we want fairness, though, you see, where you bring in your money, it's secure, we welcome you, and you get your return. Take it out if you wish, leave it here and invest some more if you can. But we in Jamaica must get our fair share of it too. Don't just tell us you're going to give us a little taxes and two jobs. We want more than that. Yes, we want sharing. Sharing has an element of equality in it. It's our resources, it's our location. So that's not to frighten, that's simply to balance. Thank you for being part of the Bridge Nation there. We call it straight on this program. We don't run away from any of the topics, and we're not just interested in telling you the news. We want to understand how the events have or can help us to move forward. That's the purpose. In our program today, remember we start just where we should start, just where all interactive media should start, talking about education, lifting up people's minds, their prospects. Educate Jamaica will be joined by Assistant Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Dr. Clover Hamilton Flowers, and the Manager of the Research and Information Division at the National Education Inspectorate, Mr. Shirlee Morgan, who will discuss the recently released Jamaica Education Transformation Commission report and the recommendations made. I understand that one of the issues that's really on people's minds is about how you rank our high schools, indeed all our schools. Yeah, and this is very important to parents. It's not the most important aspect of the report at all. And we need to recognize that if you're going to have realistic ranking, then you have to do a lot of other things that the report speaks of. But, yes, how indeed ought we to assess the pedigree of our high schools in Jamaica? Later, Opposition Member of Parliament for South St. Catherine, Fitz Jackson, will join us to talk about the impending increases in bank fees and his role over the years in leading calls for legislative changes that would address the issue of exorbitant, may I change that word? Extortionate bank fees. No, Dennis Chung, you're wrong. Dennis Chung is telling us earlier today that kind of, I know nothing, everything has gone up, so you expect bank fees must go up too. No, Dennis, not so. Proportion and original position is critical. And the helplessness of the consumer in this regard deserves a different approach from you. In our global connection today, later on, when we're linking up with Irie Jam, Ralston Hyman, leading financial analyst and fellow broadcaster, he'll join us to give you a 2022 economic forecast for Jamaica, especially with regard to inflation and price increase in goods and services. If you want straight talking about the situation of the Jamaican economy, the home that you love, the place where you send your savings and your benefits and the barrel, and you have your family, listen to Ralston Hyman. We'll also have our usual New York connection. The man's name is Beau-regard, live from the studios of our sister station, Irie Jam Radio in New York. Please join the Bridge Nation then, our conversation, yours, by calling our phone line at 876-676-4996. Put it in your phone. We'd love to hear from you. And those in the tri-state area can join the discussions by calling 1-888-546-8742. Let me give you that again. 1-888-546-8742. Bridge Nation to the world. Coming up in our Educate Jamaica segment today with Dr. Clover Hamilton Flowers and Mr. Shirlee Morgan, you'll learn much more of how the education system is beginning to lift itself out of the perils of the pandemic and how we're going to be able to transform the learning, the spirit, the intentions, the prospect of our Jamaican people. We'll be back after this break. You're listening to The Public Eye on the Bridge 99 FM. Stay tuned. Is Mr. Morgan there?
Yes, I am.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much. Manager of Research and Information from the National Education Inspectorate. We hope to join Dr. Clover Hamilton Flowers shortly. Mr. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us. The so-called Paterson report on education transformation is now with us. It's in the public domain, and the area, the section of it which seems to draw the greatest attention is the ranking of our high schools. Why do we bother to rank high schools at all, Mr. Morgan?
That is a good question, Mr. Thwaites. Long ago, we decided to discontinue ranking.
Yeah.
Because of, the furore it would have caused.
Yeah.
And the NEI would have
National Education Inspectorate.
The National Education Inspectorate,
Yeah.
the NEI, would have embarked upon rating schools or 5-point rating scale.
Yes.
Those unsatisfactory, satisfactory, good, in need of immediate support, and exceptionally high.
Yeah.
So we would have been promoting this culture on a developmental basis to place schools in categories rather on a continuum,
Right.
because we found that to be better. We found that to be more targeted towards helping schools to understand where they are, whether they are
Sure.
on target and standard,
Yes.
or whether they are, above target but still could do better.
In other words, you're providing a matrix for improvement, for development.
Within the school improvement framework, we are here to support the ministry's school improvement framework.
Yes.
So we provide independent assessment of the attainment of educational standards.
Yeah.
And we have 8 indicators of effectiveness which are combined to form this overall evaluation of school effectiveness.
Yes. But that's very different from a ranking, which, at least on the surface, appears to engage schools in a competition. And I'm not sure. I'm really anxious to know why we would want to pursue that, eh?
So you are right in using your words,
Yeah.
Reverend Thwaites, and that is not the intention of the system. The intention is to self-evaluate. The intention is to allow schools to understand from the point of view of a framework where you stand.
Yes.
Are you attaining educational standards?
So well, we'll get to the basis for that in a moment. The evaluation that the National Education Inspectorate, to which you are connected, has been doing has been an ongoing process. It's repeated from time to time, and has it, to the best of your assessment, been able to help schools to alter their trajectory, perhaps to improve their operation for the benefit of their students? What do you think?
Wholeheartedly, yes.
Yeah.
And with no reservation, we are in our third cycle of inspections.
Oh.
So we would have, yes, sir, we would have inspected all schools between 2010 and 2015 in what we call our historic baseline inspections.
Yes.
953 schools were evaluated, and we found 45% of them to be rated as overall effective.
Yes.
So we would have fed back individual inspection reports to the schools, a qualitative report on how we found them, and we would have made recommendations for improvement. Now, revisiting these schools since 2015, and this, I don't want to use the word terminated, but this came to a halt in 2020 when we managed to revisit some 839 schools to which we could provide a report that would give them a rating of overall effectiveness.
Yes. Yes.
But what we found was an improvement. We found now 71% of the schools would have been rated overall effective in the second revisiting of schools, the second inspection cycle. For the period 2020 to 21, when COVID came upon us, we still continued with our mandate to inspect schools, because as long as schools are open, the NEI is mandated to inspect. But because of the inequity that COVID presented us with, because all schools would not have been able to respond in the same way, we did not assign ratings, but we still provided qualitative feedback
for the benefit of the school. Mr. Morgan, I'm understanding you well. Let me pause you. Dr. Hamilton Flowers, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Assistant Chief Education Officer, Dr. Clover Hamilton Flowers of the Core Curriculum Unit. And may I introduce both Dr. Hamilton Flowers and Mr. Shirlee Morgan of the National Education Inspectorate to our co-host, the Honorable Pearnel Charles. You'll greet him, won't you?
Greetings.
Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Charles.
Welcome, sir. Yes. Okay, let's turn you up so you can hear. Are you, Richie? Got you? Good. Dr. Hamilton Flowers, can you answer the question for me? Mr. Morgan did, but I'd like to hear you. Why do we rank schools? Doesn't this place them in a competition inevitably? Does that help the students, do you think?
Well, I know that information in terms of the approach being used by the NEI, the idea of ranking school is not something that's, being promoted. I know in terms of providing some indicators of what we'd call standards or quality, that schools are better able to use that to help them to make decisions as to how to, treat their particular situation and address the concerns that they have.
Yes.
As you're talking about relative to ranking schools, it's also important to look at it from a perspective of, the fact that it's not necessarily that we are promoting ranking schools for us to be competitive, but we would notice too that as a part of the Jamaican culture, there is the tendency for persons to be ranking schools. But yes, when we do rank schools, we are promoting that kind of, comparative approach.
Yes.
How do we now deal with that though? If we are saying there are certain standards that we want to be paying attention to, we can learn from others in terms of what it is that they're doing as successful practices. And if we really adopt the idea that as members of the same kind of community, professional community, we can learn from each other, because part of the organization to our schools is that there is what we call quality education circles with groups of schools trying to support each other, learning from each other. So how we make use of information is what we'd want to be promoting.
Well, this is why we're so pleased for this program, because the Honorable Pearnel Charles used to represent a constituency with a school called Clarendon College.
Yes.
Yes?
Right.
Bordering on Edwin Allen.
Bordering on Edwin Allen. Yes.
Two good schools.
Sure, and you had now 2 good schools.
Yes.
But
please don't let them accuse me that the other schools aren't good.
No, you see, that is the problem.
They have. Let me jump ahead. Edwin Allen is top of athletic.
Yeah.
Clarendon College top of football.
You see?
So let's just stop right there,
Well,
so we don't get into the. But the quarrel part.
We can avoid that. But the central point that I want to elicit from our friends at the Ministry of Education and our parents and our diaspora listeners is that this notion of top schools and bottom schools, yes, is not helping us to get transformational quality education to everybody. Is it, Mr. Morgan?
I agree with you, Reverend Thwaites,
yes.
And I'm going back to our framework, because I am very happy that Mr. Charles mentioned the football and mentioned the athletics.
Yeah.
We believe in whole child development.
No, that's what the transformation report is saying. Don't only look at the C-Sec and Cape passes, but look at the holistic development of the young person.
And NEI has always been promoting that. So our 8 indicators of effectiveness include those attributes. So when we talk about schools, and I'm not saying top school now, I'm saying the top schools that are rated as exceptionally high would look like this in terms of leadership and management, in terms of teaching, in terms of academic performance, because we should not shy away from that.
No.
Academic performance is very important. If you consider a school a factory, the output would be the 20-30 citizens who would have qualified in this academic way. But we also look at the progress that schools are making in moving students from starting point A to end point B.
Right.
We look at the personal and social development. We look at the resources that are available.
Sure.
We look at the modification of the curriculum and the safety, security, health, and well-being. So when we look at all of those, to include the athletics, to include the netball, to include the technical and vocational, to include all the facets that create that whole child, then we come up with this measure of how effective the school is attaining educational standards.
Mr. Charles.
What I have discovered is that some of the students who would never think of going to a so-called country school have become so attracted to them because of their athletic program.
Yeah.
So a boy will leave and go to Clarendon College because of the football, man. And they will go, you understand? So there's some additional thing because of the programs that has been spread around to the student. And so the brighter boys in town who is driven out to the country help up some other areas of the school.
Okay.
So you see the country, that's a country school doing better now, boy. Country school great.
Coming up.
If you even look on some of the programs, they're beating them.
Yeah, but let me challenge us, Dr. Flowers. The school that takes a PEP score of 30%, and unfortunately there are some children who don't do well in PEP at all for whatever reasons, and takes them in however many years, 5 years, to the point where they are literate, numerate, have a few C-Sec passes, and know how to behave themselves and are fairly rounded individuals. To me, that school is more of a top-ranking school than the one who gets children at 95 and takes them to 97, you know, miss?
All right, so I'm hearing you're sharing your personal position. So we're getting personal there now, and it would mean that our standards would have to be similar. I'm saying that a school that is able to move a child to that place of becoming that independent, critical kind of thinker.
Yes.
And you're seeing in evidence that there is the movement, is actually a good school. So I don't want to be trapped into making the comparison now, which we're trying to guard against because of the competition we should be, avoiding.
Yes.
I'm not into anything that will cause us to be competing against each other in a way that is detrimental.
Yes.
However, we can compete against a set of standards.
Yes.
Let me tell you one of the danger that I have discovered. Old Harbor is, I forget the mileage now, from Moko, Lennon High School. Moko Road is a mile from Lennon High School. Students in the Moko Road were being transported all the way to Bustamante High and to Maypen. Students from Old Harbor were coming up to Lennon because of the standard of grade. And so the teacher is saying, we are getting the bottom of the bottom of the bottom, the scraping. And so we look like we are not doing. When if the children in the area were permitted to come to their schools, it would be so much better.
Yes, but why would Mr. Morgan or Dr. Flowers think that children wouldn't do that? It is because, in my view, they have a certain perception about the quality of the schools.
The quality of the school must be a reflection of the teachers, and the teachers must be a reflection of the Ministry of Education.
Well, let's ask for their views.
Right. So I don't want to think that in looking at education, I'm always dealing with the individual. And I wouldn't want to know that my child, for example, is very self-directed. And it is that my child is going to go to a particular school, and she will never become, a great person, will never achieve his or her fullest potential based on just the school that, I'm sending the child to. So what I'm putting on the table is, if a child is doing well in terms of academic activities, if the child has needs relative to character development, I would want to know that that institution is able to move that child academically beyond where he's at, beyond where she's at, to his or her fullest capability, as well as help that child to develop the kind of character the child is supposed to develop.
Yes.
If my child is at a different school, any school at all, that is what I'm promoting. And I want to stay away from a kind of tendency in how I would use language to describe children, because oftentimes, and I've seen this happening in the system, where some of our students who are not even doing as well in terms of academic, it does not mean they are not critical thinkers. It does not mean they are not creative thinkers. It could actually mean that we're not tapping into that which would allow them to shine like they can. But I've heard us use a kind of language that would describe them in a way that would cause them to think too that they are not able to do well.
This is the danger. So I need to ask.
That's something we want to be challenging in any way at all.
Sure.
Everything that we do should be challenging the language that we use to describe our people.
Well,
because education is much, much more than the scores that we get when we say sit an exam.
So
can a school move me to become the best that I can be? Any school that is able to do that is a good school. Can a school now look at standards that would have been set to say, let's rise relative to what these standards are requiring of us, and see how can we help to create this environment? That is what I would say is a school with the kind of focus that we should be promoting in education.
So let me ask Mr. Morgan then, how does the Inspectorate, the National Education Inspectorate, Mr. Morgan, how can you incorporate these value-added elements into the inspectorate framework? And isn't it reasonable for your evaluations to be made available to the school community and to parents?
I am in a very comfortable frame of mind now for where the conversation has progressed, and this is why. Mr. Charles, I'm very much in agreement with you that we should acknowledge the merits of all schools based on what it is that they are doing for our students. And for the last 10 years, I would say we have successfully managed to have schools acknowledge that assessment is a part of our landscape. I say that to say this. When a school can acknowledge that it is in a state of unsatisfactory, or when a school can acknowledge that it is satisfactory but can do better, we have begun to move forward. Now, what has been happening at the National Education Inspectorate, we have been feeding this information to the system, back to schools as to how they can improve, and to the system, to all stakeholders, the different departments within the ministry, so we can understand how to fix the ills of our education system. And we actually have developed a value-added model. I was very pleased when Dr. Flowers mentioned this two-sided approach to education, not just the academic side, but the personal and social side. Because this model that we have actually created was created to help us to better report on the performance of students, the academic performance, but also the progress that students are making. And when we talk about progress, we're talking about academic progress and personal and social progress. So from the get-go, the National Education Inspectorate believes that schools add value. We believe that if there was no value being added by a school, then there would really be no school. So we embarked on creating this value-added model that would use different metrics to define the academic progress that students are making, but also the personal and social progress that students are making, and use this in combination to speak to the whole child development.
Well, that's what the Paterson report encompasses. I think we understand that and generally favor it rather than simply an evaluation based upon scores of exam scores. But then
I am in full agreement.
When we find ourselves in a realistic situation that some are doing much better than others, I have to ask Dr. Hamilton Flowers, how does the core curriculum unit support those schools, the students, the teachers who really need to step up their performance? How can you help?
Yeah, that is something that
what we actually do is make use of information. So the NEI report, for example, would inform us of some of the schools to be considered, and that would influence our selection of schools that we are going to be working with in terms of designing intervention activities. And these would include, for example, capacity building sessions, working with teachers to help them to understand the curriculum and how to create that kind of learning environment that is necessary. Yes. Based on the profile of the institution, our unit, for example, would also reach out to the guidance unit if that is necessary, the media services unit, the special education unit, to help us in shaping that kind of intervention, that kind of support that we would be providing, to schools. Yeah. And we are also very, very responsive to the calls of school leaders, even a teacher. A teacher can call to say, we're struggling with this aspect of the curriculum.
Really?
How can you help us? Yeah. Our approach recently has been to see how we work with a school within the context of a QEC and help to, build this out so that a school that is benefiting from any kind of support can also share with other members of their school community within that QEC context to provide the interactions and share ideas in terms of practices. The other thing that we do too is make use of the assessment results. So when we look at the assessment data, that also informs us of trends that we're seeing, patterns and trends.
This is from the Inspectorate. The assessment report comes from the Inspectorate, eh?
Right, and remember too, we also would have had information coming from the national assessment, the regional assessment, where the results of the examinations would be shared with us.
Yes.
Again, we do the analysis and use that information to shape the activities for, even in terms of JTC training activities. We provide for them information about areas to be considered. And we collaborate with them in efforts to reach our teachers.
How are we going to ramp up this?
Competencies of our teachers.
How are we going to ramp up this, Mr. Charles? Because
let me bowl one of them.
Sure.
Because based on my personal experience,
yes,
if there were no teachers, there were no teachers. By that I mean every teacher is a production of a teacher.
Yes.
Every engineer, every profession in the world is because there was a teacher. So the teachers are taught teachers. So that's the greatest profession in the world. Now, in some of the schools, I want to know how much emphasis is placed on the leading teacher. You know why?
Why?
Teacher H.S. Williamson come all the way from a place called Troy in Trelawney. Walk, drive, beg ride. We have to take donkey go for him sometime. Come to Lime Tree Garden, miles and miles and miles away. But when exam come out, have some result, he's at the top. Now it means that there is a teacher who is totally dedicated to make sure that the children in his school, is this still out there? Is the inspectorate being able to help the teachers at the top to take a child like me, who you have to cut him head and put something in it because he never have nothing in there?
Never did I think on Educate Jamaica we would have had a description of how Mr. Charles' head get cut.
Granny, when you're so dunce,
yes, sir. I understand, sir. Nobody can. Mr. Morgan, please respond.
So I'm going to say that one of our indicators, teaching in support of student learning, we look at the quality of teaching. The Ministry of Education is a very collaborative organization. A lot happens that is not known to the general public. So when we perform this thing called an inspection, a lot of data are transported across different agencies with the Jamaica Teaching Council, with the core curriculum unit. We've even had discussions with the teachers' colleges about some of the deficiencies that we've been finding in schools in the quality of teaching. And we triangulate data. So we actually have questionnaires that we administer to our students on their educational experiences. And some of the students have told us what it is that they have found wrong with the system. How can the quality of teaching be improved? So I'm pointing to one case in particular where a couple of years ago, we would have had extensive discussion with Shortwood Teachers College and the Jamaica University, so much so that there was an open research day. And ever since then, we have been collaborating to bolster the teaching profession from that point of view, not to wait and try and fix some of the teachers who are currently in the system, but to fix some of the problems with teaching from before teachers enter the system. Now, suffice it to say, we have moved from analyzing education data at the aggregate level, because if I'm to be truthful, we would have always looked at pass rates, let's say for CSEC, or proficiency levels at the PEP, and use that to judge a school. What we're doing now at the National Education Inspectorate is looking at the performance of individual students. So our value-added model goes down to the granular level. So Mr. Charles, for you, sir, I dare say I do not like that word dunce. You may have been at a particular level of competence. We would look at where you are, your starting point, and look at where you ended up, and use that as a measure of your value-added development. So this model actually looks at the academic side, but your personal and social traits, to see how the school would have moved you from one point to the other. And I think that is probably one of the biggest takeaways going forward.
Yes, that is the value added.
This conversation, ever since we started it, and we would have had the opportunity to speak to 130 odd principals and 80 odd principals in 2 different sensitization settings.
Right.
And since then, the conversation has been so tremendous. Schools are seeing themselves in a different light. I'm not even wanting to get into the technicalities of the model now, but just understanding from a individual child perspective. Our mantra, every child can learn and every child must learn, was not created ad hoc. We truly believe from the point of view of the ministry that every child should learn. So we're not looking at aggregate data now. We're looking at individual students and trying to speak to how individual students are performing. When schools have this understanding, they can target intervention for individual students. So I like that example, Mr. Charles, where you would have thought that, you know, a teacher may not have been addressing your needs because of the condition that you described yourself in. But when we get into schools, this is what we look for. How do teachers, how does this school account for each and every student? How does it differentiate and provide for you, the lower performing child, to move you from point A to point B?
We want to emphasize that.
Yes. Could I tell you?
I am pleased with what I'm seeing in the system.
Could I tell you something, sir?
How schools are responding. Yes, sir, please.
Could I tell you something? There are some professions, some institutions, where some of us who are in there is a job we get. We're looking at a job.
Yeah.
There are other people who are dedicated
Vocation.
to the
They have a vocation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And teaching profession, running all that we are talking about.
Yeah.
It starts. Teachers can only come if you have good teachers teaching them.
Yeah.
All the other professions. And it's the greatest institution in the world.
Yeah.
But we in it, like in security, we have someone who in the back and they look in our work.
Yes, got you. I have to change. But I need to ask Dr. Hamilton Flowers before we close. What we're talking about, the schools we're talking about, are not just high schools, are they, ma'am? We're talking about every school from pre-primary, primary, right up, eh?
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes. So it's a huge task of encouraging, of evaluating, and doing, as I'm sure you'd agree with Mr. Morgan, looking at the individual, assessing them and helping them.
And Randy, you have some old teachers, you see? Yeah. You have some old ladies, a country, who for the past 30 years, they started school in them room. They are so dedicated.
I can't
that
get
if
country
there's
out of this man, you know.
Who's having a problem, they keep back that child.
Yes. But then we
I'm excited about it, you know, because I'm telling you, if it
makes
weren't for
Mr.
that,
Charles,
I would be right here.
Yeah.
The
Final
heart
word.
of the teacher. So it's tapping into the heart of the teacher.
Yes. So
Teaching
if
from the heart to reach the
coming,
heart.
Mr. Morgan. So what we're talking about then is a transformation, which it centrally has to do with the character, the training, the disposition of the teachers. Mr. Morgan, you agree, sir?
Correct. That is correct, Ronnie.
Fully agree, which is why even in our inspection reports, we try to highlight these attributes. We try to highlight what we see that is really making that difference. So our report is not judgmental, but developmental.
Well,
schools benefit from these reports, not just their own individual report, but, you know, a school would look for a similar school, somebody close to them, and look at what it is that they're doing. How is it that they're making strides to improve the quality of education in their students?
And it would mean that teachers would be on a pilgrimage to improve themselves as fully as they could. And Dr. Flowers, please don't answer. Mr. Morgan, please don't answer. Mr. Charles and myself, because of our particular background, I have to say to him, that means we must pay teachers better.
You can't pay a teacher.
And hold them accountable.
What teachers contribute to the development of a country is beyond the fact that they have to take care of their own children, take care of their family, take care of this.
You can't demonetize it.
It cannot.
Thank you. What an interesting.
You know what I'd want to say before going? Before running?
Sure.
Listen what I'd want to say.
Sure, Dr. Flowers.
If we're going to be transforming any at all, it's about everybody involved in this process.
Well, this is it.
And I think the best thing that we could do for our teachers is for all of us to support our teachers. Begin to make big the things that they are doing. Because sometimes we highlight much, much more the challenges than we highlight and make big the strides that we have made.
We'll do both.
So if we could all come on board to support teachers, then we'll begin to see transformation taking place. When we look in that same mirror, of our own lives and see what do we need to change ourselves to make things better for Jamaica.
Well, thank you very much.
Mr.
I think
Thwaites.
that's... Yes, go, Mr. Morgan.
May I beg you?
You have it.
Sir? I am speaking now from the point of view of going into schools during these COVID times. And I am going to put a plug for our Jamaican teachers.
Yes.
We did not know what COVID was. We did not know what it would bring. We did not know the impact it would have had on the Jamaican education system.
True.
Right.
But our teachers have done well to adapt. We would have to sit and discuss what we have found going into schools, how teachers are creatively using every single inch of their body, every single means of their existence to make education continue to happen, and they are doing it. Dr. Flowers, I agree with you. I laud our Jamaican teachers because education is still happening. Well, it is not the best. There are things that we still need to fix, but education is still keeping. Schools are still open. Children are still learning.
And we have started.
Well, we're very glad to have these encomia, and we offer the support. For every praise, there must be accountability, and I don't think we're disagreeing on that either. Educate Jamaica is an opportunity where we can, in fact, look and have discussions on every aspect of the education system, and we're very happy to have had you today. Mr. Morgan, thank you so much. Dr. Hamilton Flowers, grateful to you. Educate Jamaica next week, Wednesday again. Soon come back.
Thank you. Bye.
Honorable Pearnel Charles is here with me. I enjoyed that interaction with the two officials from the Ministry of Education.
Yes.
But the truth is that despite all that they say, which is undeniable, which is correct, our schools are not doing well.
No. And that's it. I don't want to embarrass myself after praising teaching so much. I want to know that the Ministry of Education is doing an evaluation on kind of teachers, not just because they have a degree, but their dedication to training, right? And the truth is that some children, as you have said in the past, are not even, what I should say, they're not fed sufficiently.
Yes.
To take in what is being given.
True.
With some.
True.
So they're left behind. Mm-hmm. And there are some children, because of the state of discipline in the society, when they walk in, them look on the teacher and tell the teacher all bad word.
Yes.
So the teacher said, oh, no. You go sit down over there.
Sure. Ignore them.
The teacher left that, and the teacher, your year finished, you're going on to the next class.
Yes.
Miss Birdie, you see that one day? Mm-hmm. I send him come to you, but I'm sorry for you.
Yes.
So him pass through the system. And when he reach 6th class, him cannot sign him name.
But then you see, when Professor Orlando Paterson,
yes,
Order of Merit, and his highly qualified team, appointed by the Prime Minister, spend months and months looking at the system and come out and tell us that some 56% of those in the grade 66 class that you speak of,
yes,
are bordering on illiteracy,
yes,
innumeracy, can't do the math, and they cannot look at a simple sentence and get the meaning, the analysis out of it. You realize that we have a deep problem. So it's useless. We can pat ourselves on the back for effort. But it is a situation where the effort is not taking us where we need to go. Why?
Well, Ronnie, let's take a look at it.
Please.
There are some parents who have thrown their hand in the air. They carry the picnic, go to school, and beg teacher, do teacher, so we can do it. Me can handle it.
Yeah,
that is some one mother,
yes, sir.
No father.
Yes, sir.
But
hold on, sir, because if we continue to dissociate sexual activity, which produces children, from commitment and relationships to raise a child,
But you can't separate that.
But that's exactly what we've done in Jamaica and continue to do.
But if we do
and that is why the mother end up carrying the child, the picnic to the teacher, and say, for God's sake, you take him now.
Hold on. You know how many mothers
yes, sir.
were just waiting to hear the school going open?
Yes, of course.
Because them cannot manage a picnic.
In the best of homes.
And the children do much better at school. Particularly, and there are some children who are dying to go to school.
Of course.
Right? For many reasons. Some want to go and see them friends.
Yeah.
Some want to go and get back onto the teacher.
Sure.
Some more food. It is a complex situation. I'm glad they have the analysis being done in the various areas so that they can decide. But teachers to be helped, students to be helped, parents must not be left out of the assessment.
Sure. But I bear some responsibility having regard to the position I held.
Yes.
But we can't end up in a situation, particularly as we hope COVID is petering out, though we're not sure, where we say everybody is trying their very best. We are spending all that we can, and still 56% of our children in this important category not functioning properly. We can't leave it like that, Pearnel.
No, I know one of the reasons is that the system finishes. In other words, it's a term thing. So me put up with you for the term, right? I pass you on, and everybody put up with them. Then they reach 6th class or grade 6, and them can't say, they cannot sign their name to say they've finished the school.
So my position, radical position now, Mr. Charles.
Yeah, come on, let's hear it.
First of all, there should be no promotion if you haven't achieved the aim, the standard of the previous grade. If you are going to, you can't do that.
Hold on a minute. Stop right there. Right, Don't forget what you're going to say.
No, I wasn't.
Let us take grade 1 that have 40 children.
Yes, sir.
Grade 0 outside and 40 children at the gate.
So
waiting to come in when grade 1 move on.
Well,
and grade 6 going through the door.
So what you're telling me
they have a system that is circle. Yeah. Whether you pass or not, you circle. But you move on. The chair is waiting for you.
So what? So when that happens, if you concede to that, yes, and it's partially that way, not quite that way. I can explain. But if you concede to any of that, what you are doing is consigning those children who are weak for whatever reason to a treadmill of failure.
But that is what Dr. Paterson found out.
Well, yes, but we did well. What Dr. Paterson has done is
and has put it to us now. What are we going to do? And what can we do?
2 things. 1, no social promotion. You promote on the basis of your competence only. 2, we have lost so much over the last 2 academic years that we have to stop and do it over and stop this patchy business.
Well, stop right there then.
Yes, sir.
Stop right there. Because you have 200 children.
I'm going to stop you only to take the time signal and come right back. But we had a situation over Christmas here where a Chinese couple in Southfield in St. Elizabeth.
Every time I hear that,
they run a wholesale. Yes, and they have been the subject of robberies and threats, right? And they apply for a firearm to do just what you are suggesting, that with the firearm they may be able to protect themselves. And the firearm authority turn them down and say they do not see any particular danger that would warrant them being given a firearm license. Turn them down. And 2 of them were shot dead on close to Christmas. Wow. So how that works out. That is a desperately bad situation, you know.
Yes.
So I'm not qualified or not acceptable to speak on this because as far as I'm concerned, I'm a pacifist. Yes? It's only the security forces should have firearms and they should be so taught to use it only in the most difficult circumstances, you know. Yes. But we are too close to the United States for my purposes.
And Ronnie, one other thing, some of these people who you and I had to help out with taxpayer money to find food and clothes for themselves and their family.
Yes.
Can't fire out all 20 bullets one night. You know, what is the cost of 1 bullet?
I believe it's a lot of money.
what them shoot up on a corner when the police picking up this could take care of 3, 4, 5 family for the month.
Look at that.
And they have the shots.
Yes. Well, you know, tell me when we have our guests on the line, please. Not listening to us. Tell me when you have our guests on the line. You want me to break in 2 minutes? Okay. Beau-regard, this is a problem. We have, and I'm particularly concerned about our young people. We have to school them so that they think in a non-violent fashion. Yeah? If they are tutored in belligerence and in violent response and in eye for eye, those who are weakest in the society and they themselves are going to eventually suffer.
Let me disturb you because when you're finished with this.
Yes.
When a child goes through a school,
Yes, sir.
and at the end of that school period for him,
Yes.
he can't read,
Uh-huh.
what he goes out to do.
Well,
What he goes out to do.
he's likely to be
He's a candidate
for. Yeah.
for going through school, can't read, want a job, and want a small job.
No.
Right? So man have to go carry something on his waist to take it.
Yeah.
And him not working, him don't want to work.
But Beau-regard, there are a lot of young people in the tri-state area who fall into that same category. They drop out of school or they're delinquent something and they fall into a criminal subculture. Isn't that the reality?
Yes, that is the reality for a lot of people here in the diaspora.
And it is so important that our diaspora community set itself a distance from that. But unfortunately, it is not always so.
Sad really that they're a candidate to be used by a certain sector of society too.
And there's another aspect, Beau, because what we're hearing is that a lot of the killings in Jamaica are ordered from US.
Wow.
Somebody go up there and him get one phone call. Yes. Can
one phone call of a man who give evidence against him friend who is in prison here.
Yeah. And you make him a duppy.
And he go a country go look for his mother.
Yeah.
And so when you go to the particular house, you miss the house. Yeah. So you kill an innocent woman and her 2 daughters and say, boy, it's missed.
It happened last week. A case of that happened last week.
Exactly.
2 people dead. Listen, we got to take a break. This is the Public Eye on the Bridge 99 and linking with Irie Jam in New York. Soon come back on the Public Eye. Ralston, are you there?
Yeah, but I'm here.
Hi, welcome. The conceptualizer, producer, and presenter of Real Business on Power 106. Pearnel Charles is a co-host.
Okay.
Mr. Hyman, greet him.
Mr. Hyman, you've been listening to us today.
Yeah, man, we've been listening to you. We've been talking.
Do you have anything to add before you get into the finances? Because I want to know who produced a Hyman. I know who produced a Pearnel Charles. I know who produced a Run It To It. But what happened to the rest of us?
Tell him about Grassyard and Kingston College, Ralston.
Oh, you were in Kingston College with him?
No, he was. I don't know what his years were, but I know he's a Fortis man.
Is yours?
Yeah. But what made the difference? What made the difference in your life, Ralston? Before we get to the economy.
Well, Kingston College made a whole lot of difference.
Look at that. Look at that.
The Mind Cup champions again for the 16th time.
Stop boast, but yes, congratulations from the man across the street. But you had a parent or you had a grandparent who was your preceptor in life, what didn't you?
Grandparent and parent.
Look at that. Grandparents and parents.
My grandfather was an ardent laborite. And he once told me that you have enough to do Mr. Siaga's work, so you need to get yourself organized.
So he
was a part of Mr. Siaga.
If you ever see Pearnel's face, you see.
Well, I didn't know you were a part of the clan.
Anyway, enough of that. Ralston Hyman, chicken price is going up, fuel price is going up every other week. Minimum wage stays stagnant. People are having difficulty making ends meet. What is happening in the economy? Is this, the IMF is saying inflation is likely to be high on a longer basis than predicted.
Yes.
we are fiscal. Sounds as if we're getting fiscally tidy with a second supplementary and now a third supplementary estimates. But where is the advancement of the ordinary people? Is that likely? Is that happening? Are we on the verge of that? Is it COVID only that's holding us back? Give us your assessment.
Just add for me, Ira, add for me. Where is the competition for the dollars? Why it is so high? Who is buying it?
Okay.
Where is it going?
Right,
who paying it high?
Who's bidding it down?
Who's bidding higher? Why is it?
All right. Got you.
All right.
Ralston, your turn.
So let's start at the beginning. Where we are right now, real GDP, or the total value of what we're producing, despite the 5.8% recovery during the third quarter, we are still at 181 billion, which is 14 billion below where we were in the third quarter of 2019 before the COVID-19 pandemic. Unemployment is 7.1%, which is a shade below where we were before COVID-19. We're at 7.2 then, now we're at 7.1. What we're also seeing is that for the first 9 months of last year, the trade deficit was 3.1 billion. Imports were running at 4.5 billion and exports at 1.1 billion. The fuel bill was at 1.1 billion. The food import bill, 1.1 billion. For the first 9 months, 8 months of the fiscal year, the government was running 2 billion behind in terms of revenue collections. The fiscal deficit was 14 billion when it should have been 13 billion. The primary surplus, the amount of money that is used to repay the debt, was at 71 billion when it should have been at 70 billion. That's where we were now. The exchange rate, $156.80. That was yesterday after 120 million in central bank intervention. We also saw the second supplementary estimate, some 25 billion was added to the budget. 12.8 billion of that was used to pay down the debt of the National Water Commission, and the remainder, 17.7 billion of the total amount, 25 billion was for debt, 12.8 billion for Water Commission, and the remainder was for the central bank's depreciation in the exchange rate and the increases in interest rates. Benchmark interest rates now 2.5% per annum. The government of Jamaica carries 700 billion in domestic debt, so every time the central bank raises interest rates in order to fight inflation, it means more interest payments coming from the taxpayers. The Finance Minister, Nigel Clark, made a presentation at the Jamaica Stock Exchange's 17th Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference this morning, and he stressed that this year's budget will be focusing on restructuring of the public sector, because in order to improve the country's productivity levels, we have to have more and better qualified persons in the public sector.
Yes.
And that the wage bill will go up. But as a result of that, more divestments will be coming. Some people will be losing jobs, and more public sector entities will be divested and amalgamated. The consumer is faced with increases in the price of water. So the Water Commission rewarded us for paying down its debt by raising water rates by 4.7%, increased electricity rates, increased chicken prices, increased bank fees. The finance minister said he called in the banks to tell them that he's very unhappy with the increases in bank fees. We see Bob Clark, who is the managing director of the National Commercial Bank and president of the Bankers Association, at the same time defending those fees, telling us that the banks suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic when bank assets increased significantly and is now 100% of GDP.
Blake.
So that's where we are. Those who have are making more and the poor are suffering.
Those who have are making more and the poor are suffering.
Yeah.
And it is not only in the banks. Because if you look at the reports, the quarterly reports, nobody is losing.
No, the stock market company.
Water Commission, everybody. Chicken man, everybody.
Except as my wife said, the big shoppers is now half
of what it is.
And the price that they pay for the half is more than they used to pay for the full. So who is losing?
So Ralston, what is wrong?
Something is wrong.
What is the economic direction that we are taking that is causing this, and what's the way out? If you have any thoughts.
Well, there's the global supply chain problem because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is driving the inflation. Many of us believe, and many people in the business community believe, that the central bank is moving in the wrong direction by raising the rates in order to contain inflation, because raising those rates won't have any impact on the freight rates that are coming from international sources, and it is costing the government more to service the debt. It is costing business to borrow more in order to carry out their activities, and all of this will be passed on to the consumer. We believe what the central bank should do is to try and manage the exchange rate regime better, and we believe in managing that exchange rate regime. They cannot continue to do what they are doing. We believe at least the central bank should sell its intervention funds to those who want foreign exchange to buy goods and services, rather than selling it to the middlemen and then have the middlemen. When we talk about the middlemen, we're talking about the MCBs, the Sagicor, the JMB, to sell back to the end users. We believe that pressure.
Yes. Okay, but then why is this not happening? Those are fairly, I don't want to say obvious, but you've argued these persuasively for a long, long time. So have others. But what is this? Is it a political dynamic? What is the relationship that prevents government from being able to do anything? Why, when Mr. Nigel Clark can get up this morning, as you report, and say that he has called in the banks and no doubt told them, listen, the public can't bear these additional fees now, that they're not doing anything, that they're not relenting, are they?
Well, he said that clearly, and that is why we're waiting to see how this thing is going to end up, because the fact that Nigel Clark can now get up and say that I've called in banks because the people can't take any more of this. We also saw the release from the Jamaica Labour Party itself, and we hear Fitz Jackson, so we see the crescendo building. So we hope we'll move from not only in terms of the increases in interest rates, but also for a change in the current exchange rate regime, because those things are having a deleterious impact not only on the consumer but on the government's finances, because 17.7 billion of the second supplementary estimates, the addition, and to go to pay interest cost.
So looking at our productive base now, tourism is down, and sadly, the American people, the health authorities are telling people don't come to Jamaica when it's not in a good position. You gave the figure of our export earnings, which seem to be just enough to pay the fuel bill.
Precisely.
Not to buy 1 pound of flour.
Precisely.
Okay. So we have a heavy leakage from the tourism earnings, also from the business processing, which is good because it employs labor. Agriculture is unfortunately in the doldrums, so it has been improving, and we hope it will do more so. Where is the balm in Gilead, Mr. Hyman?
Well, that's a very, very, very important question. One of the things that we heard Nigel Clark said this morning is that he'll be looking at the public sector, because they're in a very difficult position as we speak. He needs 11 billion more to finance the budget because of the additions he made to the second supplementary estimate. He hasn't told us where that will be coming from yet. So that's something that we need to see, and what is going to happen in the third supplementary estimate. Now, what we want to see a shift in policy to drive more productive activities. We heard this morning a company, Massey, saying that they're going into renewable energy, particularly solar. That's a good sign. We'd like to see more things happening in that direction. We hear the new Minister of Agriculture say he's going to be pushing hard on agriculture, dealing with problems such as breeder larceny and all of those things. We are waiting to see what kind of assistance we'll be getting from the budget in this regard. One of the big debates that is taking place in the economy now is how we deal with the prices in relation to chicken. He contends that
Chicken. Oh, yes.
Yeah. He contends that if we temporarily remove the CET on imported leg quarters, we could get the price down to $1.60. But it means that Nigel Clark would have to give up some revenues, and we see the people in the chicken industry pushing back and saying that could lead to a deleterious impact on their operations and the people who are producing chicken in their backyard. So that's another problem that we have to figure out how we're going to deal with.
No, but that's a classic case. It's a classic. Yeah. Things come to bump in the economy when you see that at the crucial level of food. But what it says to us is that our private sector is built upon a base that is non-competitive and largely import dependent.
Precisely.
No, these are stubborn problems. Nobody is to be blamed for that. But if life is to continue and people are to have enough to eat, then you have to do something about that, don't you?
Yes.
I want to start keep yard full, like Pearnel.
Yeah, but much of the thing you said a while ago, the private sector, the jobs, the ingredients that make up their situation is imported.
Yeah.
Most of it, yes.
And because they're nobody's starting from the grassroots.
Yes.
In other words, we're not eating from the grassroots.
No.
We're eating way up top.
We're eating American food.
Eating imported.
Yeah.
Precisely. And that is why we have the problem. You asked about the exchange rate. That is why we have the problem with the exchange rate. Because we are import dependent. And then there's a situation where the foreign exchange that we manage to retain, the Bank of Jamaica allows the middlemen to dictate where the foreign exchange goes. And that is why we're saying, given the situation that is happening locally and internationally, we need some fundamental shifts in policy in relation to things like the exchange rate and the continuous increases in interest rates, because those things are leading to a contraction of the economy, and the people are passing on that to the consumer. For example, the chicken people say, by the way, we have to pass on these things because of the problem with the exchange rate. The Water Commission tells you the same thing, electricity rates and the movement in the exchange rate. So the exchange rate is a major driver of the inflation in the economy.
Let me bowl you with one, Rasta. I went to Mandeville the other day. Every car mart that I pass, full. I was driving on Marcus Garvey Drive.
Yeah.
I said, hold on. This is General Motors.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Hold on. Try driving in Kingston 12 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We have more cars than people.
Yes, sir.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Well, so, hold on now. What pay for them?
Foreign exchange.
Foreign exchange.
Foreign exchange therapy.
Ralston, when you're gone and Ronnie don't have you to protect him, I'm going to ask him, Ronnie, don't you know where the money going?
Yes, sir, we do.
Of course we know.
What can be done about that?
We have to take some... Go ahead, sir.
We cannot continue with the policy where we say that the market determines everything. Because if we're going to continue with that policy, this is the result that we're going to get. The cars are going to come in. The fuel bill is going to climb. So we need a situation where the government is going to say that we are going to take responsibility to manage the economy. As a result of that, foreign exchange will be allocated in such a way that we finance the productive sector and those things that are essential. It means that we'll have to develop a proper and appropriate public transportation policy too. It can't be that we just sit back and say the market will drive everything, because this is the result that we're getting when we say the market will drive
Ralston, it's not even 2 years now that I said to Andrew Honis, congratulations, my God. Look how we can drive from Barbican, Constant Spring, we can come down and we can go over a 3-story bridge. But no, you can't find no space to drive now.
Precisely, because there are just too many cars on the road.
So not only cars, where you going to find one to build a road?
Precisely.
Well,
so and not be able to go to work, you're losing time.
Yeah.
Right.
You're losing production.
Impacting on productivity.
Give final word from you. Is the graph of productivity, which I know you look at with Dr. Gordon and others very closely, where is that heading in Jamaica? Is it heading up or down or flat?
No. We are still on the 20-40-year track of falling productivity levels, to the extent that Nigel Clark had to talk about it this morning in his presentation. And in fairness to him, he never only spoke about the productivity of labor. He also spoke about the productivity of capital. And he's saying that we'll have to have some gut-wrenching changes this year. But the problem is that we cannot have those changes if we're going to allow those with capital and the market to dictate everything. The government will have to take more control of the economy, not by controlling the commanding rights of the economy like we spoke about in the 1970s, but in terms of the way we allocate scarce foreign exchange, so that we don't have to have the situation where all of these cars are coming. We need an appropriate public transportation policy. All those things are necessary this year if we're going to move in the right direction, and we're going to have to be doing so in an international environment where both the World Bank and the IMF are telling us that growth is going to be slower this year because of the problems related to inflation, where we see central banks are increasing interest rates. Everybody is waiting to hear what is going to happen at 2 p.m. today when Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, addresses the world as to what the Federal Reserve Board is going to be doing in terms of interest rates. We see the problems with the Omicron strain, and we see the rising tensions between the USA and Russia in relation.
All of that can spill over. Yeah. Final question for you. This reform of the public sector to which the Minister of Finance has committed himself, that is going to be a very, very difficult task, because
that's what he's saying. Yes, gut-wrenching, yeah.
Gut-wrenching. That sounds like bitter medicine.
Say that what?
Gut-wrenching task,
oh.
Reforming the public sector. Ralston Hyman, you're always helpful, giving us a quick assessment for folk in the diaspora. Hope we can call on you again. Thank you so much for today.
Ralston, I'm still in 10 seconds. I'm still in 10 seconds to tell you that I have listened to you before, but you were speaking way above my head. Now you're speaking right in my forehead today. And I'm sure there are many people who understand when you talk about the car, the foreign exchange, and the whole thing. Yes. And I want to thank you.
Thanks again. All the best. Good. Yep. Public Eye on the bridge will soon come back. Fitz Jackson, hi.
Running Thwaites, it is good to hear your voice again.
And it's so good to have you on board. Member of Parliament for South St. Catherine, Fitz Jackson. Pearnel Charles, the Honourable Pearnel Charles Sr. is a co-host, Mr. Jackson.
Let me say it for you, Fitz. And it is not good to hear you again.
For the first time in a long time, probably you're going to tell a lie, don't Pearnel.
Fitz Jackson, the Jamaica Labour Party is protesting against the increase in bank fees. There's a public groundswell against the increases. A lame defense coming from the banking sector and people like Dennis Chung, who are saying it's just like all price increases. There is a strong resistance to what is taking place. You have been on this trajectory. You've been the advocate for the longest while. How you feel? What should be done now? What kind of response have you been getting to?
Well, I start with the simplest one first and the most profound one: for the government to pass the bill that is sitting on the order paper. It's as simple as that.
Argument done. Is a phrase.
Argument done. Yes. Pass the bill that is on the order paper, and we are moving forward.
Have you had any discussion?
Otherwise, it's a subject. The deposit holders and the depositors, the account holders, to what I say without reservation, the dishonest, unjust, and unfair extraction of people's money from their accounts that were put in the banks for safekeeping.
This morning I'm told...
Fitz, one of the problems that faces you is that you are not a trade unionist. And so when you're going to sit with the employer, you have to treat him nice. You can't call him all kind of thief and this and that, not going to talk to you. Because the fact is, much of what you're saying needs to be done and has to be done, or else we're going to have a problem. But the presentation, I think, caused you a little problem.
Pearnel, with all due respect, you're a trade unionist.
Yes.
And I know you would have done as you said. And when you have done what you have said, you strike.
When I've done what I've said, I win.
Yes, which is to be nice. I've done that. And when they don't react from it when you are being nice, you're the one that locked down the workplace with a strike. In protest.
No, we stop strike because guess what?
No, he's right.
Nobody get out anything out of that.
Let me tell you.
But let's go on with your...
But I know that Fitz Jackson has undertaken all kinds of consultations previously with the Bankers Association.
Yes.
We have heard from them their views. And the fact is that, sharp words I'm going to use, this government, from the time your matter came up in Parliament, and every single MP on the government side voted against it, Fitz Jackson. To me, that was a moment of epiphany, sad epiphany in my parliamentary career, Because many of those people understood, and they represent people who suffer from the predation of the banks, and yet, for what reason I do not know, they place themselves under the hegemony of the financial sector that they are supposed to regulate.
And then someone get all kind of excuse to blame somebody else for not doing what they should have done. Like what with all due respect, what Pearnel said, the bill was there to be passed by the parliamentarians, not by the banks.
Say that again?
The bill was there.
The bill was before Parliament to be passed by the members of Parliament, not by the banks.
Yes.
But the banks...
We who were elected and are elected, right, by the people, we had the opportunity and the power, and we failed to exercise it on behalf of the people. And then we come up with all kind of flimsy excuse to blame others while we failed to act.
And we're still doing
not
that.
Not one member of Parliament, right, on the other side. I've said clause 1BA, this part I'm not satisfied. This is what I want to change.
Because
none have even bothered, because they did what the banks want them to do, because they asked me to do the same thing, to abandon it.
No,
they
because somebody, hold a minute, Fitz. Somebody on that side say there's another way to get it done. Because nobody can tell me. Well, let's use myself. I wasn't down there to vote. But I can't be happy with that.
No, but then...
I'm not happy with that.
If there was another way, has that other way been tried and worked? How we find ourselves right now?
Hold on. I'm not sure that everybody on your side supports your field.
Everybody voted for it. That is a matter of record.
I'm not sure that everybody on your side supports you.
No, they demonstrated in their action, Pearnel. They demonstrated it in their action. They voted for it. And you don't need to go any further.
No, because a lot of those who voted against it have not demonstrated by their action.
Yeah, but so what? Hello.
Pearnel, with all due respect, that's a
so what happens? Why not know? Why not know? I mean, if Nigel Clark is reported by Ralston Hyman as saying at the stock exchange this morning that he has called in the banks and spoken to them,
the JLP team at the other level is now calling on the government to take note of it.
Yeah.
So something has happened.
But 1st of February is when the new bank fees are coming in. And even if those were not instituted or postponed, yes, the iniquity of the fees and the drawing out of the dormant accounts and all the things that Fitz-Jackson's very modest bill, in my view, provided still are going on. Fitz-Jackson, it's time to put on the armor of resistance now, you know.
Hold on, no.
Let me go a little bit further, if you permit me, Ronnie.
Yes, man.
To underscore the disingenuousness of the government members, look at the dormancy fee, for example.
Yeah, that's when you put on
which is a violation of the existing Banking Act that they have collected billions of over the years from account holders illegally. The government failed to use the power of the government to have the banks, through the Bank of Jamaica or whatever means, return that ill-gotten benefit.
But you lock up the guy who thief half dozen actually from the Governor General. Yeah.
And that's the reason why they don't have the moral authority to get up and tell me about they're going to call the bank and talk to them. They act in complicity with the banks.
Boy, what a pity.
Not by what I feel, not by what I think, but by what they have demonstrated. It is by their actions we know them, not by their utterances.
Tell me though, remind me, when was the time that you first laid that bill on the table of the House?
It was laid sometime in late 2017. It was taken on the
2017 is 4 years now.
And it went to the vote in 2018, the 13th of February.
Yeah. So and
right?
we were promised a study. We were promised a study that would go into the matter. Remember Mr. Shaw saying that? You've laid it again.
Ronnie, permit me.
Yeah.
That is another demonstration of disingenuousness by Mr. Shaw. And why do I say that? Mr. Shaw, like Mr. Samuda, like Mr. Darrell Vaz, sat on the Economy and Production Committee that examined the bill, the motion, from the beginning to the end and shaped the recommendations
that you put
in that was put before the House. They were part of the exercise. Mr. Shaw doesn't need any more review and analysis. He was a part of that process. And worse, the recommendations, which is really what is contained in the bill, was signed by Mr. Shaw and all the other government members, then opposition members on the committee. That's in the public record.
So why the backslide?
What is it then? Opposition.
What has happening is that they have...
No, it was when the Economy and Production took the issue during the PNP time. They were members of that committee and signed the report that formed the foundation of Fitz's bill. But by the time the elections had taken place and the JLP came to power, and Fitz put the bill in.
Fitz, your bill was organized...
Yeah, from the Economy and Production deliberation.
During the PNP regime.
Yes, sir. And
yes.
Who signed it? Who signed that report? Backslide. Lord have mercy.
Everyone who signed it, every one of the government members who signed the bill, abandoned it and abandoned the people
Fitz
when
Jackson.
they were lobbied by the banks.
Case,
that's not me speaking. That's a public record speaking.
Argument done. Fitz Jackson.
Do
not weary in well doing. Thanks so much for sharing the time. We know you've had difficulties. Keep going. All the best to you.
I shall.
Fitz Jackson.
And Pearnel, it's not too long. It's not too late to do the right thing. Lobby your fellow colleagues. let history recall you, Pearnel.
I saw you last
moment.
We have to go, and that's it for Public Eye on the bridge for this week. Honorable Pearnel Charles, thank you so much. Thanks to all our guests. Thanks to all those who have made this program possible. It's Nicky Z's time. See you next week.